Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sideline Banter. I am Sam Holt, joined of course by my wonderful co-host, Derek Tate, and we are brought to you by the amazing channel of Women of Fantasy Football. Tate, how are you? We are making the full playoff push. We just went past the holiday week of week 13, which had some great games, some terrible games, and then great games again, and then of course we ended with a Monday night dud. How are you feeling on this lovely Tuesday?
Channeling my inner Jim Mora. Playoffs? We're talking about the fantasy playoffs? Yeah, my team that was supposed to lock up the 1 seed this week just trying to win a freaking game because they played like diddly poo. And those are all Jim Mora quotes. Once upon a time on the record as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. But I'm doing well, so I feel like Jim Mora today.
Good. Well, I mean, I feel like this is definitely that week where we start saying playoffs, and we do all that lovely quote. But it is the time for the playoffs, and this week's episode is titled Playoff Push. So, guys, if you are tuning in live, please throw those questions into the chat so that Tate and I can help you get your lineup set for week 14. We have a couple teams on a bye, so we'll list those off real quick for everyone here. The 4 teams on a bye are the Panthers, Giants, Patriots, and the Niners. So make the moves that you need to. We're going to talk a little bit of waivers as well, but make sure you get those questions in the chat. Always appreciate you guys tuning in. Immediately this one from Joe, who's tuning in every week. We appreciate you. Do we got LA or Eagles this week? This is a big game. I mean, I'm still leaning towards the Rams making a comeback, despite the fact that they just lost to the Panthers. That was a wild game, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Rams defense in a division matchup. And they just, like you said, got upset by the Carolina Panthers. And the team's been playing pretty good football on both sides consistently throughout the season, while it's still a mystery what we're going to get from the Philadelphia Eagles on a week-to-week basis. So, yeah, I'll go with the Rams defense.
I mean, I understand why you even suggest the Eagles defense as well, because the Chargers might be without Justin Herbert. You know, he's coming off of a hand injury and hand surgery. So lots to continue to monitor there in terms of his status and how he's going to be this week. But again, I do feel like this is a get right situation for the Rams defense as well. So I'm going to lean that way. Mark jumping in the chat, wishing me a belated birthday. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. It was my birthday on Saturday. It was a good time.
25 years young again.
Again. If I did the math right, what is that? I'm 25 for the 13th time.
Well, you're doing the math. I lost count, and I kind of gave up once I started getting gray hair. So,
yes. Don't look at my roots, guys. I still have to get them touched up. Still plenty to talk about, though. I wanted to talk about lots of players to start this one. Mm-hmm. Kind of some big week 13 takeaways to jump into making this playoff push. We talked about the Eagles, so let's talk about them to begin with. A.J. Brown, does it feel like we can finally say that he's back? Because he's had at least a touchdown in the last 2 weeks and over 100 receiving yards in each of those last back-to-back amazing weeks. The Eagles, again, we just mentioned, face the Chargers this week. They're third against the position, which makes it tough. But I do feel like there should still be a chance for some success in the air.
Certainly. I mean, when you have, 3 straight games where you've seen 10-plus targets, you feel more comfortable with A.J. Brown's floor, right? I don't know if you can predict 100-plus yards and a touchdown every week. But once upon a time, he did rattle off, 6 straight games with, I think, 6-plus receptions, 100 yards. So, I mean, he's certainly capable on this type of volume of putting up, top 5 elite wide receiver production. I still think he has that skill set. It's more so the Chargers matchup defensively. What they did to DK Metcalf, and I know they're different players, but they didn't really let him get vertical all that much. So is Brown going to be utilized underneath enough in an offense that still seems to be figuring things out entering week 14? That's a question, but I still feel comfortable that he's a top 20 player at the receiver position this week and moving forward.
I mean, I feel like he has to be. This was definitely one of those situations where a couple weeks ago it was this squeaky wheel. Was it going to get the grease or not? And it definitely seems like to be the case. Devonta Smith got dinged up a little bit a couple weeks ago as well, so I think that helped. But I do feel like they're finally starting to get the swing. A player that's not getting the swing of things is Saquon Barkley. 4 weeks in a row. less than 12 fantasy points. Last 3 weeks, less than 10 fantasy points. Absolutely brutal. He's got middle of the road defense in terms of, how the Chargers play against the running back position, and then Raiders. And then they've got Washington, which is 29th against the run in week 16, and Buffalo is 30th. So I feel like it has to be better days ahead just based on these matchups coming up for the position. But it's really hard to find confidence in that considering the poor level of just output. I'm not going to say poor play. I'm going to say output and how they're utilizing him.
Sammy has one 100-yard rushing performance this year.
It's
it is a season removed from rushing for 2,000, and it's not like the offensive line was significantly overhauled. I mean, it's mostly the same crew. That was a dominant crew last year. So it is his fall from grace is just as perplexing as A.J. Brown's. It's more frustrating because he's still seeing on a normal basis pretty darn good usage and volume out of that backfield. So you have to start him because the upside is still there. And I still like that he's mostly involved in the passing game. I know he didn't catch a pass last week, but 2 games ago he did catch 7. So I don't have it in me to tell anybody to bench Saquon Barkley in week 14, particularly if they need to get into the fantasy playoffs with a win this week.
Yeah, no, it's a hard situation because obviously we're trying to find some positivity and some upside. I'm seeing some questions in terms of, players either or. Guys, I'll get to you in just a second. And another question asking, do you guys answer fantasy questions here? Yes, we do. So please go ahead and throw them in the chat. We will get to them as quick as we can. But back to Saquon. I mean, in terms of where you drafted him, I'm really curious to see how your team is shaping up. And if you guys have rosters where you've got Saquon and you're making the playoffs, I mean, just, list your teams in the comments as well. Would love to see them too, because you're definitely winning despite him right now. And hopefully you've got someone like, I know for myself, I've got Travion Henderson in a league that's been really clutch to come up late for, a flex potential running back that I'm sliding up further and further. It feels like in terms of rostering him, I guess it's just hard to watch. It's just a really slow motion train wreck watching him try to put up fantasy points each week.
Well, you got to ask yourself a question. I mean, yes, the concerns are legitimate. I'm certainly not trying to downplay any of those, but we've seen Kyle Manun guy, I think, score a rushing touchdown 4 straight games.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to, because Manun guy is getting work and he's found the end zone in 4 consecutive games, do you feel comfortable starting him over Saquon? Because he's been performing more consistently over the last month.
Yeah, no, see, and exactly. No, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. I'm not so bullish and bold and what have you to make moves like that. I don't know who else is, but you try to make roster moves to move players around to get those that are actually having the high upside into your lineup. And then you just have to say a little bit of a prayer for players like Saquon just to try and get some numbers up on the board. But I see a couple questions, so let's jump to those before we jump to the next team. This one from Mark. Best wide receiver to add depth in PPR, Mitchell or Pierce?
I'd say Pierce. I know it's close because we've seen some good things from Adonai Mitchell. I'm happy for him that he, had a career day. And certainly kind of wondered if he was ever going to see the field anywhere else in his NFL career after kind of that, career-defining, moment against the Los Angeles Rams earlier this season. But bounced back in a big way. Kid is still very, very talented. And the volume's been there, Sam, with no Garrett Wilson, and him and John Mechie have both seen plenty of work over the last 2 games with Tyrod Taylor under center.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, I still trust the Colts offense a bit more. Alec Pierce has been the definitive vertical option in this offense. I still believe they're going to get right. They've had a matchup over the last 2 weeks against 2 pretty tough defenses. So while Daniel Jones has come down to earth a little bit, and so is the rest of the Colts offense, I still expect them to finish strong. They got Jacksonville this week, and I think Pierce is a good play.
I agree. I like the matchup for Pierce as well. I definitely think that he's been really consistent in terms of the way that they're using him and how he's being used in different ways across the field as well, in multiple different route sets. So for me, I do like Pierce a little bit more when you compare the two. Let's see. I've got... My camera is in the way. I need to move my thing. I'm like, what am I doing? It's okay. It's just my first time doing a podcast. It's fine. It's my first time podcasting. You know, I've never done this before.
Someone did ask, is it live? Yeah, we're live.
Yeah, so. We're live. And that's how you can tell. Because if there's a question in Mark in my prompter, I will read it like a question. I will Ron Burgundy it. But let's get to this one from Mark. Best QB streamer to replace Purdy, Bryce Young, or Tyrod? Well, the Panthers are also on a bye, so it's not going to be Bryce Young. It's going to probably be Tyrod. And actually, Tyrod is a good waiver target this week as well. Kind of surprising to see the Jets putting it on right now. But at the same time, it just also feels like it's part of the script for the Jets to suddenly get good when no one's counting on them to do so.
And it pushes them further and further away from the number 1 overall pick. So it's just football purgatory, as I call it, for the New York Jets.
Yeah.
But yeah, Taylor this week is not a bad streaming option if you're looking for rest of season, which it doesn't sound like you are with Purdy. But yeah, the way Bryce Young has played over the last 2 games, I certainly think that he's becoming more and more intriguing because he's starting to resemble the player that we saw over the last month of last season. And he's starting to click now with Tedrow McMillan and even Jalen Coker getting a little bit more involved. I'm not bullish on that offense, but I do think that Young is worthy of a stash, even though you're not going to play him this week. I do think that if I recall correctly, he's playing Tampa Bay in Week 15, which is not a bad fantasy matchup if you're kind of in the streaming situation entering the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, very fair. But for this week, I definitely like Tyrod, and he's got a good matchup as well. Miami is 26th against the position, so like that as well. Let me see. Got this one from Joe. Mr. Tater, honorary Bucks fan. Why do they hate Sean Tucker?
They don't hate Sean Tucker. I just believe that Bucky Irving getting back muddies the waters even more so than it was prior to him being out of the lab for north of a month. So we saw all 3 running backs on the field this past Sunday, and they're all 3 players that have all had their moments in the NFL. And I think you're going to see more of that, particularly while they're trying to integrate Bucky Irving back into the offense off of a shoulder injury contact. Maybe they're trying to, put him on some sort of a touch count. But either way, a 3-man rotation is not one that's ideal. And unfortunately, it seems like Sean Tucker is just lost in the mix there now that Bucky's back.
Yeah. I just all you can ask for going into any season is consistency at the running back position, right? But do we ever get it?
No.
No. This is not a world we live in. We can't feel safe at any point. All right, this one from Joe. So I know you just said to go with the Rams defense against the Cardinals, but should they also start Brissett over Nix? Interesting question. In terms of looking at them on Fantasy Life rankings, because I'm a company woman, Brissett is ranked QB 10, while Nix is ranked QB 12 against the Raiders. Still slight edge. I mean, I do feel like Brissett has an amazing ability to get his pass catchers utilized early and often. Bo Nix has had some interesting struggles, and I think the Raiders' defense is a hungry one. So I can understand why it's a little bit closer than you like these two in terms of rankings. But what about for you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bo Nix. I understand that Brissett's been playing well, and they're basically filtering the entire offense through him. And Marvin Harrison Jr. was back. That's good to see him back from the appendectomy. So that's awesome. But the Rams defense is one that I prefer not to mess with in comparison to the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that Bo Nix didn't have a great matchup. What was it, about a month ago against the Raiders? I think he threw for like 150 and a score or something like that. It was ugly. And it's been ugly a lot for Bo Nix. But, coming off a game where he threw for 321 yards and a score. And, he did throw an interception, Sam, to a linebacker that is essentially a statue out there in pass coverage now with Bobby Wagner. But
fair.
He can still catch it if you throw it right to him.
He was not moving. That was really funny.
No, no disrespect to Bob Wagner. I mean, the Hall
Yeah.
of Famer, but I mean, you did throw it right to him for
Yeah.
crying out loud. But no, I'm gonna go with Knicks. I still think he gives you a little bit more rushing upside, even though we really haven't seen Knicks using his legs over the last 3 games.
No, it's almost like he's learning from other young quarterbacks' mistakes and understanding he needs to protect himself a little bit as well. So I definitely feel like it's okay that he's protecting himself and not getting the run in. To your point, and I think that what you'll feel better, Joe, in what you do is if you like to, you know, not put your eggs all into different baskets and you want to just lean in and say, okay, I'm starting Rams defense and I'm going to start Bo Nix just so I don't have to have the panic when Brissett throws the interception that you want from the defense. It'll help you sleep at night if you just kind of split that way.
I'll also add one more thing about it. Since J.K. Dobbins has been out of the lineup over the last 2 games, Bo Nix has averaged 41 pass attempts. So I just think that they're probably going to rely on him more moving forward, or until J.K. Dobbins maybe gets back in the lineup at some point. I think it won't be until like the playoffs. But point of the matter is, if they don't trust R.J. Harvey fully yet, then I believe that they're going to lean on Bo Nix to orchestrate the offense.
Absolutely. All right, let's stay in the division. I want to talk more about different players that you are counting on going into the playoffs and this weekend as well, in terms of trying to make sure you make that playoff edge. We got to talk about Mahomes in terms of what he's been able to do this fantasy season. And I know that you and I, it is what it is. We were not hyped on him going into draft season this year at all. And it is what it is. It's fine. We recognize and we learn and we try and get better and we try and improve. However, with Mahomes, 4 touchdowns this weekend and over 250 passing yards, it does hurt, especially considering it was against the Cowboys. That being said, they face the Texans this week, which has been an absolutely brutal defense. So you're likely someone, maybe you waited on quarterback late and you're doing really well with Mahomes. This might be a weekend you panic a bit.
Well, the weird thing about Mahomes this season, Sam, is he's been pretty streaky, right? Like through the first 3 games, just 3 touchdown passes. Then over his next 5 games, he threw 3 plus touchdowns in 4 out of those 5 contests. And then he went another 3 weeks with just throwing 1 touchdown pass. And then last week he throws 4. So it's the lack of a running game. And now that they're in a must-win scenario, you have to imagine that if there is playoff Patrick that's going to activate, it has to activate now. Not a good week to try to have to activate, GOAT candidate Mahomes when you're facing against the Texans defense. And Sam, now both of his offensive tackles are banged up, Justin Simmons and Jawan Taylor. That's not good. And even Trey Smith is hurt. So it's like it's a bad week to have issues up front against that defensive line. So I'm not worried. I'm still starting them, but it's just, you have to probably temper your fantasy expectations this week.
And within that same breath as well, you probably need to temper your expectations for Rashee Rice as well, considering that the Texans are 5th against the position. It's gonna be tough sledding this week. But when you look at the rest of the season after this game, you've got Chargers, Titans. Broncos is going to be a tough defense as well, and then you've got Raiders. I do feel like you're going to end up back in the winning category, and I do think it's a plus that the Chiefs themselves are not sitting in the best position. So they're sitting at 6-6, and they have a chance at missing the playoffs, considering how hard everyone's playing for it in their division, and it's really up for grabs. So the Chiefs are in a must-win situation, which you want if you're a fantasy manager with Mahomes or any Chiefs pass catcher, because that means that they're going to continue to take risks and they're going to continue to try to get the ball downfield. And there's no one better, arguably, in a 2-minute drill than Patrick Mahomes.
Well, so I hear you with that. And I still think that they'll take some shots downfield, Sam. But what's the one way that you can neutralize a pass rush if your offensive line is compromised?
Yeah.
Get the ball out of your hands quick before they can
Fast.
get
Yeah.
there.
Be fast.
So,
Be faster than I
and,
am today.
and what does Rashee Rice do really well? He's a
Speed.
great yak guy. Like
He's
just
fast.
get it in his hands and let him create after the catch. So, maybe he's not going to give you many explosive plays, but Sam, there's a reason why his worst fantasy output this season is 9.8 fantasy points in a full PPR format, because he is the guy that Mahomes will dink and dunk to. He can give you the splash plays downfield, but he's also someone you can scheme up touches. So I'm fine with Rashee Rice. It's the other ancillary parts that make me a little bit nervous this week against this defense, particularly the vertical options, because, again, is he going to have enough time to be able to take those vertical shots down the field and convert on them at an efficient rate?
I think that's fair. This is going to be a really interesting game. Again, we're already very well aware of how tough this Houston defense is going to be playing the Chiefs. And I feel like I just said, they've got a lot on the line in terms of trying to get another win. They are at home this week. That is a plus side for them. Weather's looking cold, 27. I'm such a baby living in California. I'm like, oh, why would people ever even go outside? That's horrible.
Sam, I think they got to win out to make the playoffs. We're looking at a very realistic possibility that there is a playoffs in Patrick Mahomes' prime where he's healthy and he's not participating. That's wild to say. That's wild to believe until they are mathematically eliminated. But the tiebreaker situation, Sam, for those wild card spots is horrible for Kansas City. They lost to Jacksonville. They lost to Buffalo. They've got Houston this week, who is ahead of them in the standings. So they can make up some ground. The same thing with the Chargers, too. Chargers beat them earlier this year. And I don't think there's a shot in hell that they catch the Denver Broncos, even though they keep winning by, the thinnest of margins against bad teams. It doesn't matter. They're not, 10-2? Like, their record is their record, and the numbers just don't make sense. They got to get one of those wild card spots, and I just don't see the math making sense if they don't run the table.
Yeah. No, they have to. They have to run the table. And again, this just bodes well for fantasy managers to know that you've got teams that are going to be, you've got the Chiefs that are dying for it. They need to get out there. They have to get everybody involved if they want to have a chance. Before we do more on other teams, let's jump into a couple more questions, because this one from Joe leads us into a lot of fun discussions when it comes to waivers. And when you're sitting in week 14 and you're thinking about who you're going to drop and pick up as you prepare for the playoffs, this is your last kind of ditch effort to make sure you've got the best available for your roster. Joe asks this. He says, who are your biggest upside waiver pickups? Need to put up massive points this week, regardless of winning, to make playoffs. Don't think Trey Tucker and Tez Johnson have enough upside with Tet on a bye, which I think is fair. So since Joe's highlighting the wide receivers, looking at the list that we've got along the ticker on the bottom, if you guys are tuning in and listening, I go ahead and I pull over waivers from theamazingfantasylife.com. My good friend Kendall Valenzuela. So make sure you check out her article as she does a deep dive on waiver targets. But Tate, do you have a favorite wide receiver here listed? I think I can think of two, but you let me know.
So we're talking about waivers, and you're looking to throw a high upside dart. So say you're projected to lose to your opponent, and you need to make up some points, and you need to take some home run swings. I do think Dontavion Wicks is worth a look. What was it? 6 receptions, 94 yards, and 2 scores last week. And I know there's times where he can't catch a cold, Sam. And I know it's the Green Bay Packers, and you never know on any given week. It's like a box of chocolates to quote Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get with this group of pass catchers. But Wicks is someone who I think can have a nice performance against the Chicago Bears. I don't love the conditions, though. Adonai Mitchell, who we already talked about, that's another guy that I would be willing to throw a dart at, even though he's probably another guy that struggles with drops sometimes, but that's what you're getting right now. The only other guy, too, playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Davante Adams. Vele caught all 8 of his targets for 93 yards and a score. And I think that this is the third straight game where he's had over 85% of the offensive snaps. I get it. It's Tyler Shuck. It's New Orleans Saints. It's not very exciting.
Yeah.
However, since Rashid Shaheed was traded, it seems as if Devon Bailey has been the guy that's kind of elevated into that wide receiver 2 role. And alongside Olave, they seem to be on the field enough. And over the last 2 weeks, 15 targets for Bailey. In the Bucs defense, they are susceptible on the back end to some big plays. So I would go with Devon Bailey as another guy to consider under waiver wire.
To your point, your Bucs are 22nd against the position, so I do like that one in terms of a high upside played specifically for this week. I like Dontavian Wicks as well. I think I just get nervous with so many pass catchers there on who to count on. Looking at, Luther Burden has had a couple of catches, but it's not been as consistent and big play as I'm excited. I do feel like the high upside that you just outlined with Vele is probably going to be the best, you're shooting for the moon and trying to get some big points. So I do think that would be a good one.
Burton is always intriguing because of how explosive of a playmaker he is. And it is encouraging that he's seen 5+ targets in 3 straight games, which is a far cry from what we saw his usage be earlier in the season. But I just don't want to mess with Green Bay if I don't have to. Defense-wise. I don't want to mess with their defense.
Yeah. No, don't want to mess with that defense at all.
I think Burton is worth a shot too, just because he's a good player. Sure.
Also worth a shot. This question from Mark threw me off, but it's a good one that I think needs to be asked and answered. Mark is staying over the weekend after work at an event in Orlando and to do some Christmas shopping and take in the parks. What color lightsaber should he build? What color would I build? That's a good question. Considering I believe that I lean towards, I lean away from the dark side. I do feel like I'm part of the good and a part of a Jedi. I believe that I would go with blue. I do have a lot of blue light behind me. So for myself, I would probably pick blue.
Yeah, I would go with green. I don't know why. I just always kind of remember it from Return of the Jedi. So,
yeah.
It reminds me of Yoda. Yoda.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like I think of Luke more when I think of the blue lightsaber, so I definitely lean towards more of the blue.
That battle between him and Vader in Empire, that's still, I don't care. I know choreography-wise it's not the best, but that's still the GOAT of all the lightsaber battles in Star Wars.
Absolutely a GOAT. All right, I want to talk about the Lions a little bit because we've got an injury to talk about and we've got some, positive things to say. So it's I'm going to try and do a compliment sandwich because I feel like last week I did a lot of woe is my roster and all of these fun things. So I'm going to try and stay more positive this week. Let's talk about the Lions. And I want to say Jameson Williams has been an amazing bright spot. 7 receptions, over 100 yards receiving, 144 yards to be specific, 10 targets and a touchdown. St. Brown dealing with a low ankle sprain, and he's likely going to miss 1 to 2 games. So to me, this makes him an absolutely must start, depending on the matchup, potentially wide receiver 2, not just being a flex consideration. Is that where he ranks for you, especially this week going up against Dallas, that are ranked 32nd against the position?
100%. He is, I think, a top 20 option. I thought about flirting with Isaac Tesla, the rookie from Arkansas, as a dart throw on the waiver wire as well at wide receiver.
Be a cute flirt.
Flirting a little bit with the idea. He had 92% of the snaps this week, Sam. 2 catches for 35 yards. Yeah, the volume wasn't there, but this guy is a big play threat and scored on one of those 2 opportunities. And against Dallas, in a game they need, oh, boy. I know the Dallas defense has been better, but it's just hard to imagine a world where, Jared Goff and the Lions offense doesn't show up in a must win for them. They're on the outside looking in right now at the NFC playoff picture.
Absolutely. On the outside looking in, and they're coming off a loss at home. They're playing again at home. I feel like they haven't had the same amount of home wins that they normally do. I think there's been in years past a joke that Jared Goff is an indoor cat where he likes to play inside a dome, and that's why he tends to do well. It has been a little bit, not necessarily opposite, but there's been something bucking against the curve there. I definitely feel like this is a must-win game for both these teams. This should be a really fun Thursday night game just because there's so much on the line. Again, looking at the matchup, I mean, you've got the Lions sitting at 7-5. I believe that the Cowboys need to win outright even to attempt to secure a playoff spot. I don't think that even that is going to be enough because they're sitting at 6-5 as well. 6-5-1, sorry. So that one really starting to kind of eat them.
Well, it hurts them a little bit, but it also helps them a little bit. I actually think, Sam, maybe their best shot is catching the Eagles to win the NFC East. And I know
that would be a wild game.
That would be a wild development if it took place, but Philly's kind of reeling right now, and Dallas is hot. So it's like, I don't think that they have, I mean, they have some ground to make up and there's not much time, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility considering the temperature and the trajectory of both teams right now.
No, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fireworks, and especially like just again looking at the matchup for both teams. I do feel like there's the offensive weapons for the Lions have a great matchup in them. It's going to be a little bit tougher for the Dallas run game and for tight ends specifically, just because the Lions actually do play against those positions quite well, but they do struggle against their pass catchers. This is going to be a pass happy game. So I do feel like on both sides, both receivers, I mean, you're going to have CD and Pickens having a field day. It's going to be, to me, which of these Detroit pass catchers are going to have the biggest game, considering that we're likely to not see Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams, like we just said, is going to be a must start. To your point, is Isaac Tesla going to be someone that also has himself a big day just because it's such a good matchup?
You know, Sam, I know that we spent the majority of the year dunking on the Dallas defense, and they deserve it, right? They rank over the last 3 games second behind only, surprisingly, Jacksonville in rushing yards allowed per game.
That's not good.
So is this Dallas defense really fixed up front? Or are the Detroit Lions going to run wild on them? It's a fascinating matchup on Thursday night.
Very fair. I mean, considering how Gibbs can absolutely set the world on fire in the receiving game as well, you know, he's someone that I think can also have an amazing day too. It's going to be a really fun one, and I can't wait to watch that one. So had to make sure we talked about Jameson Williams. I just want to make sure that no one's thinking, I don't know who would be thinking not to start Jameson Williams, but just get him into your lineups, because if you don't, you're going to be regretting it quite a bit. This one from Joe. Start 2 for the Guillotine League: Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Javonte Williams.
Give me James Cook for sure against Cincinnati. And then give me Javonte Williams. I think that there's a better chance that Dallas-Detroit game turns into a high-scoring affair, which just lends itself to maybe Williams having a higher probability to fall into the end zone than the Bears-Packers. That could very easily turn into, I don't know, a low-scoring affair if that Packers defense dominates, but the offense is still kind of stuck in neutral with their inconsistencies through the game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also going to go Cook and Williams as well. I would have, sadly, going to have Jacobs just sitting slightly outside. I mean, I think I like the matchup. I agree with you, just a little better for Williams as well. I don't know. There's something about this Bears team that makes me a little bit nervous for the Packers this weekend. I hope that people don't judge me for that. And maybe this is also one of those things where as soon as you start believing in the Bears, they go and Bears themselves again and be exactly what we are used to seeing. But they're definitely a team that's been a lot of fun to watch as well. Let's see. This one from Joe. Would you go any RBs over these wide receivers? Also, would you rank the wide receivers? So we've got Trey Tucker, Wicks, Tez Johnson, and Vele, half-point PPR.
How would I rank them? I'd probably go Wicks, Tucker, Tez, Vele. Maybe Vele over Tez. It's real close.
I was just going to say I would flip those two, but then I'm basically matching yours as well. So I agree. Love it. All right, let's get back to some more fun talking about these teams that are going to hopefully help us get through these playoffs. Again, I'm trying to stay positive, so I'm going to talk about a player that has probably snuck up and done a lot for you this season. Davante Adams for the Rams has been just set it and forget it consistent. Adams has actually outperformed Puka Nacua in the last 2 weeks, so you're obviously starting both of these players if you were lucky enough for somehow managed to get both. But if you have Adams, you are absolutely laughing to the bank because he's been so damn consistent.
Well, what? We have over the last 6 games, we have, if I'm doing my math correctly, 11 touchdowns.
Yeah.
11 over 6 games. He is a goal line receiver.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we've ever used that phrase before, but
no. Yes. I don't think it's supposed to work that way. I don't think
it's wild.
It is
absolutely wild. He has. We got a definitive answer. Did the Rams get an upgrade when they parted ways with Cooper Kupp and brought in Davante Adams? Yeah.
They did.
That argument's over.
I think it's also wild because the 1 week in that 6-game stretch that he had you'd argue a poor fantasy output, he did have the touchdown off of 1 catch.
Yep.
And he did have 8 targets, but he had 1 catch, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. So he did not blank you that day for how many targets he didn't get, but that was against the Seahawks, who've had an amazing defense against the pass as well this season. So I think it's just
goal line receiver.
Again, goal line receiver. It's wild. It doesn't make any sense. Going against Arizona this week, they're 15th against the pass. This is definitely a situation where you're definitely not starting them. But in terms of how you look at, I want to look at their forecast more so for heading into the playoffs outside of this week. Okay. We just talked about the Lions, and anyone can pass on them as well. So that's a very friendly matchup, I think, in week 15. They go back, they're seeing Seattle again. So they're in Seattle in week 16. That was the 1 week where I already highlighted that Adams struggled and that defense was very tough. So that's going to be a really brutal week to watch. Then you've got Atlanta and Arizona again. So I do feel like overall a relatively very playoff friendly schedule. The only one that makes me a little nervous is that Seahawks game.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, that's the only one that gives you any pause for concern. And in the previous matchup, we still had 8 targets. The efficiency was unusually low for guys of his caliber, and particularly how well this offense is playing. So, yeah, there's probably not going to be a ton of fireworks in that game, but just with how consistently they have peppered him with targets when they do get in the red area in goal-to-go situations, including inside the 5, where most teams run the ball, but the Rams don't really have a thumper with Kyron Williams in short yardage situations, and they've just been more than content to kind of go heavier personnel, but just have Adams be the one receiver on the field because he can win, Sam, in those one-on-one situations right at the line of scrimmage. He's still a press release demon and one of the best route runners in the NFL, even at the age of 32.
Yeah, it's freaking wild. It doesn't make any sense. But let's talk about another running back duo that has been interesting for fantasy managers and has a tough matchup this week. I want to talk about Bijan Robinson and Tyler Allgeier for the Falcons. Tyler Allgeier being the less of a Falcon and more of a vulture all season long, 4 touchdowns. I cringed as I thought of it, but I had to say it. I know what I did. But he did get a touchdown this weekend, but Bijan as well had himself a decent weekend as well. He had a touchdown and over 142 rushing yards. You're not mad at that. 5 receptions for over 50 receiving yards. This is going to be a really tough game, though, because we just talked about how Seattle plays so tough, especially against running back position. 6th. They play the position 6th in the league. This is going to be a nail biter if you are a Bijan or even Allgeier, even flexing him potentially. I know I have in some leagues. This is going to be a nail biter for a weekend.
Yeah, so even last week when the Seattle offense was actually uncharacteristically not very good. Like Sam Darnold actually, I think, had one of his worst games of the season. So he's cooled off a little bit. I don't think that they're going to struggle quite as much against the Atlanta defense as they did against the Minnesota Vikings defense. And obviously, Brian Flores and the rest of that staff is very familiar with Sam Darnold from him being on the roster this season prior. But if the Seattle offense gets back to its normal standard that we've seen this year, and that means a lot of JSN, who also had a quiet week last week, I think he'll have a bounce back week this week. I am hoping that usage in the passing game is something that translates and transfers and continues into this week, because I don't think we're seeing, even an 80-yard rushing performance for Bijan Robinson against this defense. So hopefully he doesn't get vultured, and hopefully he has a nice PPR floor, which he has for the majority of the season. I would be hesitant to rank him inside my top 5 this week because of the matchup.
Oh, no, yeah. I definitely feel like this pushes Robinson outside of the top 5 for rankings in terms of the way that this defense is going to be playing against him as well. I mean, that's holding almost true on Fantasy Life rankings. I mean, consensus has him sitting right at running back 5, but there's a good majority where they're ranking him just outside of the top 5 as well, just because it's going to be so tough. And to talk about how dominant this defense was, I work for Fantasy Life on the side. I like to do graphics, and they have me doing some fun stuff over there. So one of the things I do every Sunday is they have me make the top scoring, high scoring ranking points for social graphics. So when it came to the late slate and I was looking at who was the highest scorer, the Seattle defense with 30 fantasy points was a top fantasy performer. So that was pretty wild and hilarious too. When you're looking at what was a kind of a messy slate of games, like who's someone that's popping off right now that I can actually add to this top 5 list? Seattle defense was the reason why the offense didn't need to do anything, because they did everything. They absolutely crushed it this week.
Yeah, they did. And it really ruined my optimism about Max Brosmer.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I wasn't, out there, conducting the hype train, because I was like, okay, he's an undrafted rookie, long shot to, make the roster to even enter the season, much less to get on the football field. I was really hoping that he was going to have at least a competent week. Running into the Seattle defense is about the worst in Seattle, was about the worst assignment he could have drawn right out the gates. But Sam, some of the picks were inexcusable, particularly the one where Ernest Jones house called it pick 6 as he's being dragged to the ground and just heaves it into the void.
Yeah.
Very disappointed with him. Very disappointed.
Well, yeah, especially considering with that coaching setup, that way that it's always supposed to be, he's supposed to be O'Connell's supposed to be a QB whisperer. And the only thing he could whisper on the side is just,
get me out of here.
Get me out of here. Like, how are you doing this badly? There was no whispering. It's just yelling. Like, I don't understand. Like, it didn't make any sense. But anyways, to tie a bow on this, I didn't end up trying to stay too positive on Bijan. I do feel like I can't put him outside my top 10 for running backs this week, but it is going to be a rough go against.
Don't start Allgeier. That's my advice too.
Yes, that's essentially the move, is to not start Allgeier. Find other flex-worthy candidates that I definitely think that you'll be able to find this week, because it's not looking good. It's not good. It's not a good time. My goodness. Let's see. I'm trying to get to. I want to talk about a couple more waiver wire targets. We've already covered quite a few on this list. We talked about Dontavian Wicks. We talked about Devon Vele. Darren Waller, tight end coming back from Miami, just got activated off IR. And we can talk about Miami, I think, a little bit more as a whole, because they're a team that's been absolutely brutal. Dumpster fire doesn't really cover it in terms of how that locker room's doing. But again, we've got 4 teams on a bye and you're trying to find upside. If Waller is good to go, they're playing the Jets. I don't think that it's a terrible matchup for Waller. And if you're looking for a tiny bit of upside, could be some there. Again, for myself, when it comes to the Dolphins, the only Dolphin I trust in starting, I want to say week in and week out, but even there, I still say a little bit of a prayer. But Devon Achane is probably the only one I'm still confident starting.
Yeah, I'm fine with him or Waddle. But Waller, he was only on the field for 47% of the snaps. Saw 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 47 yards, and the other one was in the end zone. So, and Waller had, an unsustainable, touchdown catch rate percentage when he was playing earlier this season. But if you are desperate, you could look there. Another guy that I would also look towards, Brenton Strange. If he's on your waiver wire at tight end, I would run to go get him, and I feel more than confident starting him this week because right now it seems like Jacoby Myers and Brenton Strange are the 2 options in the passing game that Trevor Lawrence trusts in the short to intermediate portion of the field, and I just don't know if this season we're going to find the perfect fit for Brian Thomas. He's still a nice big play home run threat. But as far as like PPR floors, I think there's an argument to be made that the 2 most valuable players in that offense could be Jacoby Myers and Brenton Strange.
I think that's fair. Brenton Strange sitting at, what is this, tight end 7 for the week on Fantasy Life rankings right now, going against the Colts. So I do like that one as well. I got to mention this one too, just because the matchup is so good for the running backs for the Rams. Blake Corum is on the list as a possible waiver wire target as well. Again, Cardinals 22nd against the run. And knowing how Sean McVay is such a chess master and how he likes to prepare his team for the playoffs, do you think there's a potential where, not necessarily that Kyron doesn't get all of the run, because I'm sure that they're going to be utilizing him. Again, this is such a friendly run game. That if the Rams get up by, a touchdown and a field goal, let's say, maybe even 2 touchdown lead, that we see a lot of Blake Corum and there's a decent amount of rest for Williams as they make their playoff push.
Sure. I think you can absolutely see a path where Corum gets more reps. Over the last 6 games, Sam, he has seen a minimum of 7 carries. And in some of those blowouts that you're mentioning with that type of game script, like Jacksonville comes to mind, New Orleans comes to mind, like 12 and 13 carries in those games. So I do think that there is a path to where he potentially sees north of 10 carries this week, which does put him in flex consideration, or maybe a real desperate RB2 throw for your roster if you're hit with bye weeks or injuries against Arizona.
I like that. On the tight ends, we've got Mark following that up with a question here. So wants to know, Strange or Gadsden rest of season?
Strange, and I don't like saying it because I love Aranda Gadsden, but Sam, I'm not going to pick with my heart. I'm going to pick with my head right now, and I just there's a lot of mouths to feed, and that's what was kind of a little bit head-scratching about Gadsden's breakout earlier this year, was because there were times where he was leading the team in targets and receiving yards with all of the other receivers healthy and on the football field. So, but that seems to have kind of dropped back down to the mean. I think that there's also a case to be made that he's staying into chip block on some of those edge rushers because they're so banged up on the offensive line. So I think that could be preventing him at times from getting into the route a little bit earlier. So right now I feel a little bit more comfortable with Brenton Strange over Gadsden, as much as that pains me to say.
No, I think that's really fair. And you have to look at, Justin Herbert obviously dealing with a hand injury himself as well. So if they have to move Gadsden just to get, again, more protection for Herbert, to give him more time, then that makes a lot of sense as well. So
we want nothing to do with Trey Lance under center.
No, I love that very violent head shake. No, that was you. I know that you did that because you have 2 daughters, and I'm sure that they've done that to you. No veggies.
No.
No,
No.
no, Daddy, no broccoli. What are you doing? That was the head shake that you said.
You made me think of Mr. D. Like, no, Daddy, no. Like,
Oh my god.
you use foul language in front of the lady.
Oh my gosh. Back onto the rails. We've covered a ton actually today in this show, but we have to get to our favorite part of every week that we do. It's funny that the very last thing we do is our favorite thing, but it's a good time. We've got petty parlays for you, and these are parlays where there's just a little bit of an edge. There's some drama, some sourness. There's something petty for these players to be playing for. Tate, what are your 3 petty parlays that you have for our lovely listeners and viewers?
Yeah, kids, it's time for the Tater Parlay of the Day. Count them with me. 1, 2, 3 leg parlay. And normally when I'm doing some research, Sam, when it comes to petty parlays, I'm trying to identify teams and players that are facing off against their former organizations, have a little bit of extra motivation.
Yep, keep it.
That's not a word.
It's fine. It is a word. It's a word now.
Motivation. How about that one? Yep, get it. Last name Tate. Anyway, so look, didn't see a whole lot of those narratives that I really loved. So I'm going to go maybe a little bit more personal. Petty parlays.
Vendetta.
Personal
Vengeance.
grudge vendetta. Yes.
I like it.
Wordsmith, you're very articulate. So let's start with Josh Allen, right? So once upon a time, Josh Allen, there's a lot of noise about how he's never beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Sure.
Another guy that also got him in the playoffs is Joe Burrow. And this week, the Buffalo Bills are taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals have very, very, very slim chances to win the AFC North. They are essentially on life support. But the Buffalo Bills are not exactly in a great position either right now, Sam, as far as the security of them advancing to the postseason. And once upon a time, Josh Allen got sent home by Joe Burrow back in the 2022 NFL postseason, the divisional round. So I think it's Josh Allen getting a little bit of revenge against Joe Burrow and company. Give me 3 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 on the ground for your boy Josh Allen against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, which actually looked pretty good against the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. But I think that's more of a Lamar problem than it is Bengals defense is all of a sudden good. So I'm putting my faith in Josh Allen to get some revenge against the Bengals.
I like that a lot. And I love that you brought up the point in terms of how the Bengals defense recently just showed up against Lamar and the Ravens. I feel like there are a lot of holes in the Ravens team this season. And I feel like we're going to end up closing this year out knowing that there's a multitude of injuries that Lamar is dealing with because he's just not moving the same way he normally does as well. So he's not been as mobile. And to the counterpoint there, Allen has been immensely mobile and incredibly dominant. I love that of these 3 touchdowns that you're calling, at least one of them is going to be on the ground because I think it absolutely makes sense for him, especially against the Bengals, who are ranked 28th against the position. This is going to be a really interesting game for Josh Allen to really cement, another strong outing, strong MVP candidate conversation discussion, and to your point, work to cement a run to the playoffs and to get to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. So let's move. Speaking of superstar quarterbacks in the AFC, let's move to Kansas City.
Yay.
Where Patrick Mahomes is also playing for his playoff chances, I guess. And
question mark indeed.
They are in trouble right now, and they're facing off against a Houston Texans team that they sent packing just 11 months ago in the AFC divisional round. Ooh. Sam, it was a divisional round. CJ Stroud won in the wild card round. Apologies, just trying to make sure I got my facts straight. I had it right the first time because I know this matchup, And I know right now that Houston, your defense is a problem. It's a major, major issue. And I think that Kansas City, while they've had some dominant performances, comes to the Colts in the second half in mind, they have had a lot of issues this year, Sam, getting off the field on third down. I think that they have the sixth fewest sacks in the NFL. And the one way that I think that you can really get this Houston Texans offense, which we saw earlier in this year, all out of sorts, is to put pressure on C.J. Stroud. But Stroud came back, first game back in a while, and looked all right. So I expect this Texans defense to be able to keep Mahomes in check, particularly with a banged-up offensive line. And I'm expecting C.J. Stroud to potentially hit the knockout blow in a revenge narrative for him being sent home last year in that same exact building. Go ahead and give me 2 passing touchdowns.
Ooh.
Even though I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, I think that that's their path to beating the Kansas City Chiefs and sending the football world into an acceptance stage that we may not have Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs once the calendar turns 2026.
I love it. I mean, I definitely feel like this is going to be another, really tough matchup to watch. We just talked about how, Dallas this week was going to be a really interesting matchup there with the Lions as well. This is another one that I think is a must watch because this defense and what they do to Mahomes is going to be really intense. But to your point, in order for the Texans to really have it out for the Chiefs, Stroud is going to have to be doing some spectacular things. And I think that they can do that through the air. And I definitely feel like Collins is going to walk away with a touchdown. I think Higgins is a really good touchdown candidate as well, so I do like that. What is your third petty parlay?
Last one. We're going to the NFC North division. A matchup between the Packers and the Bears. Tale as old as time in the National Football League. And for as long as we could remember, there was a guy named Aaron Rodgers that absolutely owned the Chicago Bears.
He owned them.
For the better part of, 2 decades, it felt like? At least 1 decade.
Yeah.
What the matter is, the Chicago Bears, Sam, they have something going there in the Windy City with Ben Johnson and company. The offense is generating a ton of explosive plays. That running game, Sam, has been completely revamped and seems to resemble quite a bit what we saw in Detroit with Monangai and Swift kind of looking a little bit like Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Point of the matter is, this team has bought in. They believe. And what better way for the Bears to exact some revenge on a franchise that has had their number for decades, in particular at the quarterback position, for Caleb Williams to tell everybody that there's a new sheriff in town. Go ahead and give me, I'm going to go with a rushing touchdown. Give me an anytime rushing touchdown for Caleb Williams. I'm not bold enough to predict that he's going to torch the Packers' pretty damn good defense on the back end, but I do think that he has proven that he is a gamer. In particular, even if it's not going right in the first 3 quarters, Sam, there has been times where I think his maturity has really shown through, and that is a big part of the reason why this entire team, which they've been very banged up on the defensive side of the ball, have been able to rattle off 9 wins this season and are in first place in the NFC North. I don't think it's a fluke. They just beat the defending Super Bowl champions, and now they've got a chance to really put a stranglehold on this division against the Green Bay Packers. I think they get the job done. I think Caleb Williams finds the end zone. Tell me I'm crazy, but maybe there's a new sheriff in town in the NFC North.
I don't think you're crazy. I like the anytime touchdown. I'm a little bit questioning on the rushing. I actually think that it could be a good passing touchdown to one of the tight ends that he's been having a lot of consistency with. I do like the idea of an anytime touchdown, and maybe give me a little Colston Loveland there. And I think that could be a really fun one too. Or it could be Kmet because he's had some on and off weeks with either tight end. But if they're gonna get a win, I do feel like it's gonna be some magical plays from Ben Johnson. And it could be a really fun one as well. This week is going to have some fun matchups. I'm excited, but those were some really good petty parlays there, Tate.
Yeah, that's your 1, 2, 3 leg parlay for the Tater parlay of the day for week 14. Good luck, kids, and hopefully you make it to the fantasy playoffs.
Thank you so much, Tate, for those. We actually have 2 quick questions that we will answer before we sign off, just because I don't want to miss or leave anything on the table. These are both from Trone Force, so let's get through these pretty quickly here. Tight end question to start us off. Would you drop Goddard for Kyle Pitts or Zach Ertz? Goddard has put up 4 points the last 3 weeks. We just talked about how the Eagles have been struggling and absolutely brutal. So let's try and find some upside for the tight ends here. I understand your hesitation. Goddard's still ranked, what is that, tight end 8. Pitt's currently tight end 11 on Fantasy Life rankings.
Those touchdowns are doing a lot of the heavy lifting for Dallas Cowboys.
They're doing all the heavy lifting. Ertz is not sitting here inside the top 25 or the top 20. If you were going to do a dart throw on one, I guess you could pick up Pitts just because you're probably very frustrated with Goddard. It's just hard to, I don't know, it's hard to really lean that way. We're splitting hairs.
If you want to make an argument for rest of season Pitts over Goddard, I'll hear you.
Sure.
Week 14 against Seattle.
It's not good.
I don't want to mess with that. For this week, I would roll with Goddard. Also for Zach Ertz, I don't like the fact that Terry McLaurin gets back in the mix. I actually think that steals targets away from him, and really his entire thing is volume. And with a healthy Debo and they're operating in the same portion of the field, I don't like that. So I'll roll the dice on Goddard this week, and then I'm okay with Pitts over the final over the fantasy playoffs because they got Tampa Bay, Arizona, and the Rams all the way in week 17.
Yeah. This last one, and then we will sign off. Again, from Trone Force, appreciate you throwing these into the chat. For darts bye week, so obviously Giants are not going to be available. I have several shares of Jackson darts. I'm a little bit bummed myself, but they have Bo Nix. Would you drop Bo Nix to pick up Jordan Love versus the Bears? It felt like Nix struggled to get just 18 points against the Commanders last week.
You're asking me to pick between 2 inconsistent quarterbacks that drive me nuts. I understand it's the decision you're faced with, but Bo Nix and Jordan Love. So here I'm gonna default to the matchup, and I don't want to be someone that's gonna say that weather has a huge impact on things, but it is pretty damn cold in December in Green Bay or Chicago. Take your pick. And in comparison to Las Vegas, I'll go ahead and just feels like the matchup and the setting is probably a little bit more favorable for Bo Nix.
And when you're looking at Fantasy Life rankings, they are neck and neck, and our lovely rankers have them kind of ping-ponging around each other, with Love sitting just one slot higher at 11 and Nix at 12. But again, like I said, when you look at each individual analyst's rankings, they do bounce around quite a lot. So this is a mass consensus rankings. I do agree. I think for myself, I would stick with Nix this week. Just want to make sure that you're getting some consistency there. And you're so welcome for sticking around to hear this lovely, as the best we can, at least in terms of giving you advice heading into week 14. With that, we will go ahead and wrap up our Week 14 episode, guys. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow everywhere that you get your podcasts. Give us a like, give us a review, leave a comment. We appreciate it, and we love that you guys tune in for us every single week. We will see you next Tuesday as we break down heading into the playoffs, and we wish you all luck, and hopefully we all see you in the playoffs next week. Have a good one.